All right. A little bit of a pre-show here. So I've got the live class coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes, and I still don't have the slides done. So I'm going to show you what my process is for doing slides. So I've been an instructor for almost 20 years now, and so I know my way around slide decks. And I was thinking I should probably finish up the slides. So today's episode is going to be on Ansible Components. Now, it's not a big deal that I have it in the slides yet because I can do them really quickly. Because what I've done is I've been working on the class in my head, and I would go on walks and I would have this little digital recorder, and I would record my thoughts into the digital recorder as if I were doing the class, kind of practicing. I would do it on drives. I was about 2 weeks ago. I was in a week and a half, something like that. I was in Arizona for skydiving, and I was driving to and from Phoenix down to Eloy, Arizona for a skydiving event. And during that long trip, it was like an hour. I would basically rehearse the classes. So this is the process that I use. So this is the slide deck as it is. There's 9 slides. That's not enough for an hour and a half. This class will be about an hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes probably. Again, it begins at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So this is just the pre-show. If you want to watch this, I'm kind of doing this live just so I'm not distracted, and I'm not don't like look at Reddit and that kind of thing and watch YouTube. So this is kind of helping me concentrate. And again, it's the pre-show. The actual class doesn't start for a little bit. 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I've got my slides here. Basically, this is where all the slides are going to come from. So I'm going to make some slides here. And most of this class is demonstration, so I don't really need all that many slides. And there's a lot of pet peeves I have about slides in terms of courseware. One of my biggest pet peeves is people reusing slides over and over and over again. I try as much as I can when I do a new course or I update a course to make new slides. Maybe not all new slides, but I've worked for a bunch of learning partners who, when they get a contract for a new course or they get a new course and they have this bucket of slides they've been using for the past like 10 years, and they're like, here's all the slides. We're going to use all of these slides. We're just going to update 1 or 2 of them. And you get this like crusty old, you get these slides that just start fitting less and less well into the courseware. So I don't like that. So I almost always make new slides. The last course I wrote that I did, I don't think I reused any slides. I haven't reused any slides for this course either. So this right here is my map. So the lesson today, the episode today, is on Ansible Components. So we're going over the various components. So the Ansible control node, Ansible config file, inventory file, playbooks, templates, configs, group vars, host vars. Going over what they all mean, how they all interact, what belongs in them. We'll be going over playbooks, inventory files, etc. And then the next lesson will be on variables. So variables are a big enough topic, they're going to be their own episode. So let's go ahead and put these. These are going to be the controlled nodes. So just put that in there. Just to give a... So this is the map that I'm using. It's really easy to get lost in... should have put up a little thing. I see people joining. That's cool. You don't have to watch this. I'm just kind of doing this so I can do it publicly and not procrastinate or get distracted. Let me see if I can put in like a text. Put in some text. GDI. This is just the pre-show for episode 2. it down here. Gonna make it, what color? Still learning this software. Oh yeah, change the color, select color. Something that stands out. That. Okay. All right. Uppercase, alignment, center, 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 center. Okay, so put a little thing in there just so people know that it's just the pre-show and not the actual class. Again, the class starts in about an hour. But in case you want to watch the process I do for making slides, I try to do slides as fresh as possible. Again, it really annoys me that there's some slides I've seen for like 15 years. I'm just like, all right, it's time to retire the slide. All right, so this is the map. This is this entire this episode on Ansible Components is going to be based off of this map. So I can use this map as my outline for the rest of the slides. So I've got the Ansible control node, and I talk about the control node. For example, it could be a bare metal virtual machine or container. It's typically going to be a virtual machine, and why it's going to be a virtual machine, why it's going to be Linux. You could use other operating systems, talking about that. Other things about the Ansible control node, a lot of people start asking about, is it HA? Is there going to be, like, is it a service you run? No, it's just a bunch of scripts you run. So there's no really HA. The backups are usually handled by Git. So the playbooks and inventory file and all that's stored in Git, GitHub, or not GitHub, but in a Git repository somewhere. You could have your own Git infrastructure. You could have GitHub, GitLab. There's a couple other options there. And then sizing the control node. There's a little spelling mistake in here. Most of the time, the Ansible control node is idle. So it's not really doing anything. It only actually consumes CPU or memory when it's running a playbook, and generally it doesn't consume a whole bunch of resources. So it doesn't really need to be a super crazy virtual machine. So we start talking about sizing it. So that would be the Ansible control node. Let's see if there's anything else I want to talk about. Oh yeah, installing. What it's like to install Ansible control node. So I'm going to walk through the installation of one of the Linuxes that I use, Alma Linux, and how we actually install Ansible on Alma Linux. It takes a couple minutes, so we'll do that. So installing Ansible on control node. There's several different ways we can install Ansible. The best way that I've found is pip3 install Ansible. You can do Ansible core, but Ansible is more complete. Ansible core just installs the very basics of Ansible. Then you have to install a whole bunch of stuff on top of that. If you install Ansible, so there's, I'll put something in here. The best method I know of is pip3 Ansible installs Ansible and related components. Recommended. And then Ansible core installs just the bare minimum for Ansible. And then pip3 install Ansible is the command. I'll take that out there. And then I'll put this little reminder in for a demo. There's people oftentimes kind of trash talk PowerPoint and slide decks in general. And yeah, there's a reason for that. They're overused. And if you're reading from slides, you're not a good instructor. But I think slides are important because it gives a structure to the class. It helps the instructor remember where they're supposed to be at a certain point in the class to make sure they're covering all the topics. And it also gives students something to read and look at during the class and say like, hey, what's this little point here? Maybe the instructor forgot to talk about something. So I believe that slides are important. They also give good diagrams, like a map. One of the things that I've tried to do when I'm teaching is to create some kind of map for whatever subject I'm teaching, especially if it's a technical subject, because it's really easy to get lost. And what do you want when you're lost? You want a map. And so this will be a way to reference and come back to, where are we? How is this related to this? Well, we just come back to this map. So that's the Ansible control node. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 slides on the Ansible control node. So that's probably about 10 minutes of discussion. About 2 minutes per slide. That's kind of a rough. It's really hard to say how long an instructor will spend on a slide. There are some slides that I either skip or spend about 2 seconds on, and there's some slides that I spend like 10 minutes on. But I would say about 2 to 3 minutes per slide is usually what I go for. All right, so the component map here. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Ansible config file. So what I'll do is I'll just highlight the rest of these to show that we are concentrating on that, and I will give it a quick style of gray just so we're looking at that. And I'm going to pull up an Ansible config file. I use basically the same one everywhere. And I can actually just paste it in here. Let's do that. So let's do Ansible config file. And I'll put it into a text window, and I'll just paste the text. You can see it colored things. So, so here's an interesting thing I've been debating on doing. I've always been a proponent of black text on white backgrounds for slides, because for most of my career, whenever I've done slide presentations, I've done them on projectors. So I've, up until COVID happened, up until 2020, from like 2008 to 2020, whenever I taught a class, I was in a classroom somewhere. I was in a meeting room, and there was a projector, and there was slides being projected onto a screen. And the best way to make it readable was to do black text on a white background. It was easiest to focus. It was easiest to read. And it really annoyed me when people would do things like, oh, we're going to do a really cool slick style, and we're going to make we're going to do a highly stylized slide deck, and we're going to make these and like there's no contrast here. So this might look interesting on a pamphlet, but it looks terrible on a slide because you can't read this because there's no contrast. So black text and white backgrounds, that's what worked best for projectors. Now we're in the age of everything's on a screen, on a video screen, TV screen. Well, not really TV screen, not like we used to think of a TV, like a CRT, but it's going to be on a phone or on a laptop monitor or laptop display, something like that. It's going to be on a display. And I'm thinking maybe it's time to switch to white text on black background. I think that might be easier to read in that environment, because if you're like watching on a big flat screen TV and it's white text, it's like that's a lot of light being emitted from that TV that can strain the eyes. So I've been starting to do this stuff at least with I'll fill this with black. So black text there, and I'm kind of particular on my margins. Top margin needs to be a little bit, I try to make it all even. It's a 0.1 inch. It doesn't really matter all that much. Also the font here is a typical font, and we want a monospace font. And I don't have this particular monospace font. It says I'm using the font, but it's clearly not a monospace font. So I don't think I have GitLab Mono installed on this system. So I'm going to install GitLab Mono. So GitLab Mono is my favorite font for this kind of thing. GitLab Sans. Where's GitLab Mono? So let's install this. There we go. So that's a mono font. It's all kind of jumbled up, so this is probably something to do with... Yeah, we want that. There we go. That looks more human. So there we go. And then I'll put something on top of it just to let everyone know what this is. So this is Ansible.config. Also do that GitLab Mono. There's also like Consolus. That one's usually pre-installed. I don't like that one though. That's just personal choice. There we go. I'll put that on top. I'll put a black outline on that. Do I want to match this? Make this white and then make the fill black. Still working on. I need this to be. Yeah, so yeah, it's gonna look a little sloppy. That's all right. So this is my Ansible config file. Nothing. We'll talk about what each of these pieces mean. And so that's the Ansible config file. There's not a whole lot to it. So I'm probably going to spend 5 minutes talking about what each of these things mean, and that's about it. Most of the time we'll be talking about the inventory file. So I'm going to copy this, and we'll do this. So yeah, I'll put a separate section header here. So this will be the inventory. Or the Ansible config file, and then Ansible inventory file. It's one of the most important parts. So that'll be probably most of the class we'll be talking about the inventory file. Class starts in about 1 hour, so 58 minutes actually. So the Ansible inventory file, and so I'll just gray out all these other things to let people know where we are in the map. I'm a big fan of the map thing, especially with these esoteric concepts. So we'll do that. And there we go. How's my streaming looking? Looks okay. So I'll need an example of an inventory file, so I'll find another one. It's not too big. I'll probably do mostly demos on this one, but there's a good one. One of my live demos, probably. Yeah, we'll do that. The problem with doing a slide on some of these files is that the files are pretty big and hard to do. And they're tough to do in a single text box. So like you can see here that this is probably a little bit big. I can, so I want 1.0 there. I want to do a black background. And I'm going to shrink the text until it fits and then just see if it's like too small. Because it kind of looks like it's too small. I could, just because I am doing black text on white background, this kind of just, I don't know. What does this look like? Oh yeah, this I can shorten this up actually. So there's something you can do in yeah. So this, I just shrunk this. So now I can make this text bigger, and maybe I can fit it all on one page. That would certainly simplify things. There we go. That's a lot better. So an example there, and then the other thing, there's a couple things about Ansible inventories. Let's go ahead and make this a title and content. So I'll just have to slide this over here. I always stop suggesting until I restart. There's a lot of things about PowerPoint I like. There's a lot of things I'm really annoyed by it. One of them is it keeps trying to suggest themes, and all of them are really bad. Like all the different themes. Like if you were to create a new PowerPoint, it would suggest all these themes that are pretty bad. That's why I use the basic one most of the time, and maybe do some customizations on it. So we've got Ansible inventory. A couple things about the inventory. We've got groups and hosts, also known as nodes. Ansible's fairly inconsistent about the terminology. They talk about control node and controlled nodes. Those are the devices that we're actually running Ansible against. But in the inventory file, they don't call them nodes, they call them hosts. And I tried, does nodes work? It does not. I've tried it. So, so we got groups and nodes. We got variables. And we'll talk about the variables there. So the first thing we want to do is groups and nodes. Talk about groups and hosts. Oh yeah, we should talk about the file format. There's a couple different types of formats that are supported with Ansible. There's INI, which is old school Unix style config file. There is YAML. You can also do JSON. YAML is the recommended one. I would highly recommend using YAML. It's going to be just a lot better. I started out using INI because I was used to INI because I've been a Unix admin since the 90s. And it quickly hit its limitations. So YAML is a lot better. You can do JSON, but JSON's so difficult to work with for a human just because of the way it's formatted. I think YAML is just a lot better. So we're going to use YAML. And I'm going to highlight that. So the file format that we're going to use. So groups and hosts in Ansible. So all hosts nodes need to be declared in the inventory file. So you must have that inventory. You must declare all nodes. So anything you're going to run Ansible against, you have to have it declared in the inventory file. It's a good idea to group related hosts together in Ansible groups. A host can be in more than one group at a time. And then I'll do a demo of making a group. Maybe I'll do a diagram here. Let's do a couple of diagrams. Groups, all. So we generally will have an all group. So this will represent the inventory file. I'll do a light gray background. Do a little text here. So this is my inventory.yaml. YML. By the way, it doesn't matter if you do YAML or YML. Most systems will know what you mean. Do an outline here. And here I like to do white and then black. So this is my inventory YAML file, and then I'm going to have a group called all. And I'll put everything in all. I'll fill that with the same there. And then that'll be like leaf 1, leaf 2, leaf 3, leaf 4, spine 1, spine 2, spine 3. So you can do it like that. That's fine. And then you can also groups based on purpose. Based on purpose. So you would have the all group, but then you would also have in there you would have a group for your spines. Let's make that a different color. And leaves. Gotta bring this to front. Let's make that white. Actually, let's make this a little more subdued. This is kind of an intense color. I'm gonna burn everyone's retinas. Let's do that. That's a little softer. I'll make that black just to make things consistent. F4 in PowerPoint will redo the same thing that you, whatever you did to the last thing, it'll do the same thing. So that colored everything black. Still got users? Still got viewers? Yeah, four people watching. Wow. Welcome. This is the pre-show for episode 2. I'm just finishing out the slides that I'd procrastinated doing. I'm doing it on live stream just so I can help, hear myself think and not procrastinate or get distracted. I can also, so here's another thing we can do. We can do maintenance groups. I like to do maintenance groups just to show how we can divide. So maintenance A and maintenance B. So if I were to do a maintenance, maybe I would do the odd numbers first. So maybe I'm doing reboots or something, and I'm using Ansible to kick those off. I want to do it on my odd numbers first, and then I would do my evens. Four, leaf 2, spine 2. See if that makes, yeah. Because just because you're in a group does not mean that you can't be in another group. So there's no monogamy of groups here. So this is putting everything in one group. This is dividing things up by their purpose, a spine or a leaf. And this is, we can have multiple groups that have the same host in them for different purposes. And we call these groups in the playbooks. And we also call the groups when it comes time to do things like variable files like group vars or host vars, or group vars in this case. And then we can do, the other thing I'll put in there is contractions. Shortcuts. What do we call those? I'll look it up. Yeah, it does create the all group by itself, although it's good to just declare it. Ranges. Okay, short ranges. That's what it's called. Host ranges. So when we do these, we can do ranges. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it. We'll take this out. Yeah, so ranges, and then I'll also do. Let's do maintenance. Yeah, maintenance A. And then under that, I say hosts. And I can do leaf 1 through 4, count by 2. And that'll be 1 and 3. And then spine 1 through 3, count by 2. Then it'll be just 1 and 3. And then I can do maintenance B. Hosts. Leaf 2 through 4, count by 2. And then 2 through 2, count by 2, which would just be 2. So we can do host ranges, which is fairly handy. To tidy up an inventory file, can do ranges instead of listing them individually. Leaf 1 through 4, 1 through 50. So I do have a topology that's 1 through 50. Let's see if that is up and running right now. Oh, looks like it is running. So let me put it into the... So I have a VM. It's a monster VM. It's got like 64 gigs of RAM in the VM itself. I tried to demo it in the last class, but I had too many VMs turned on, and the hypervisor ran out of memory. Because again, this is a pretty big. This is a really big VM. Here it is, right here. And so I've got all the way to leaf 50. There's nothing really on it. Let's take a look at that inventory file. That's not the right one. Because I changed the names. That's my AVD one. Where's my just regular inventory? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, because you see here I've got all these leaves listed here for 50 leaves. And what I could do instead is I could do leaf 1 through 50. They both do the same thing. And this is considerably a shorter inventory file. So talk about that. Can do odds evens with the third option count by. So leaf 1 through 50 count by 2. Even would be leaf 2 through 50 count by 2. So they'll be the even ones. So we could do it that way. So just to tidy up, I'll make this, change the font to a monospace font. I think that's enough on the inventory file. Got about 40 minutes to the class. I'm going to shut this down in a little bit. Then the next one is playbooks. And playbooks can actually be a little bit more annotated. I've got plenty of examples here. So the next section will be playbooks. And we'll copy this map so we show where we are. Allergies are bothering me this morning. So if you're just watching and just got this in the background, welcome. It's fine. I don't know why I'm broadcasting this. I guess to hold myself accountable so I'm not just looking at YouTube and memes all day. If you have any questions on how I make these slides or strategies or something like that, please ask. So I need the full colored one. This one. And we're going to do playbooks. So the rest of these I'm going to gray out. There we go. Playbooks. This will be anatomy of a playbook. Everyone bolted when I said ask any questions. That's hilarious. That's fine. Playbook. I need a simple one. Add VLAN. Add VLAN's great because that is a very, very simple playbook. I can annotate this. And put some text in here. Make it white text. And make it monofont. A little trick. You notice it's really hard to tell, but if we zoom in, you can see that there's a little bit on offset there. It drives me nuts. I mean, you may not be able to tell in the resolution in the stream, but that's because it doesn't have an outline. So if you just set an outline, now it matches up perfectly. I'll offset that a little bit. All right, so add VLANs to device. So this is a single playbook with a single play and a single task. And I'm going to do another playbook. So make this smaller. It's going to have 2 plays. What size is this? 11. I'll make this 11 too. because for whatever reason I wanted to put VLAN 100 on the leafs and VLAN 200 on the spines. Oh, you know what? I should be consistent here. Keep everything capital. You don't have to do this, but I generally will capitalize all my groups. You do not have to do that, but that's generally what I do. This just helps to know that if you see something like that, you know it's a leaf or a spine. All right, let's do some call outs just so we know what components are what. So a call out is I'm going to highlight a part. I'm going to make the fill no fill. I'll do the outline in red, and I'll increase the weight to something like 3. Trim that up. And then I'll do a call out box. And I like to do a rounded one. And say this is a play. Then I'll do another call out box. And this is a task. Let's do some text here. Text is a playbook. A playbook is a YAML file containing one or more plays. A play is a set of tasks to be run against one or more hosts, as defined in hosts. Can be hosts or groups or combo. We can do combos of that. Let's zoom out there. So a playbook is a YAML file containing one or more plays. So I like to try to emphasize the words that are going to be important by putting them into capital or italics. So a play is a set of tasks to be run against one or more hosts. A task is a calls upon a module. So a task calls upon a module. A module has the code necessary to perform the specific task. A module will require parameters because the things that we want to call to here is in any playbook, in any play, we have the modules, we have the playbook, we have the plays, we have the task, we have the modules, we have the parameters. Playbook, plays, tasks, module, parameters. These are the things that we work with day to day in Ansible. And parameters necessary to complete a task. What was that alert? Oh, freaking, I don't care. Is depends on the module. Varies widely from module to module. So that should not be italicized. So a playbook is a YAML file containing one or more plays. A play is a set of tasks to be run against one or more hosts. as defined in the hosts, as defined in inventory file. Can be hosts or groups or combos. A task calls upon a module. A module has the code necessary to perform the specific task. A module will require parameters, and parameters necessary to complete a task varies widely from module to module. I know I said I'm not supposed to read slides, but I think sometimes it does actually help to read slides because I think this is important. So this is a play. Make this, yeah. So this is a play. A task. Let's make these bigger. I'm gonna just say play. Play. Task. That's the module that we're going to call. In this case, it's EOS VLANs, and then we have the parameters. So this one has 2 plays, so I'll just copy this. Make that bigger. This is the first play. They're not really numbered. And we have a second play. So the reason why they're different plays is that we're doing different things. If I were just going to add VLAN 100 to both the leafs and the spines, then I would just do leafs and spines. And then I wouldn't have to have a second play. But I'm doing something different for the 2 of them. One has VLAN 100, one has VLAN 200. Not sure why you would want to do it this way, but you could. I need to refill my coffee pretty soon. You can also do multiple tasks. Let's do that. You just do that. That'll work. So this would add the 2 VLANs. So first task. Second task. I could probably just demo these. I don't know if I even need to make slides for this. Probably better as a demo. But maybe I'll make these slides available afterwards as additional study material. So 2 tasks. And then the second one, I think, for the playbook would be loops. Because we can do loops, and that might be useful in certain situations. So we'll copy that and paste that into here. Loops. Changes could not be made because the server was too busy. Great. I really hate OneDrive. OneDrive is terrible and it should go away. And one thing that drives me up the wall about PowerPoint is that there's no autosave feature unless you're saving to OneDrive. And there's no reason why that has to be the case. There's no technical reason. The only reason why on PowerPoint that there is that autosave can only work on OneDrive is to sell more OneDrive. That's it. There's no technical reason for it, so there's no good reason for it. And I really dislike the way that Microsoft does that. All right, so I think, yeah, loops, and we need to get these variables from somewhere else. Let's do some text. Name that, and then I don't need the 3 dashes. Make this bigger. Can loop in playbooks. Loops depend on variables covered in the next lesson episode. So we'll give a brief on that. What else do we need to do? So we're going to spend most of our time on inventory and playbooks, and then the rest of this. Oh yeah, controlled nodes. Because we have to talk about how we connect to nodes. Devices, hosts, nodes. Back to our component map. Yeah, this should be more than enough material for an hour, hour and 15 minutes, hour 20 minutes, hour 30 minutes. Component map. Highlight all this stuff. And gray it out. Gray it out. Sometimes I sound Canadian. I'm not Canadian, but sometimes I sound Canadian. And there's differences in so Ansible initially was meant to control servers, typically Linux servers, but they could be other types of devices, even Windows. And that meant they logged in via SSH and uploaded Python code and executed it remotely. So that's how Ansible worked in the server world, and that's how it still works today. It was agentless, so as long as your host that you were running Ansible against had Python installed, then it would upload the modules and all the code, run it locally, and then bing, bang, boom, you've got whatever stuff you wanted to run. With network devices, we generally do not log in via SSH and execute code. There are different ways to connect to a network device depending on the network vendor. So different devices have different ways to connect, and there's going to be some general ways that we can connect. The first one, which I think is the easiest, is vendor-specific APIs. So that's Arista's eAPI. I think there's with NXOS, so Cisco NX API for NXOS. I think that's one of the ones you can do. There's open APIs. So netconf, open config. It's now part of GNMI. RESTconf. And then there is netmiko. Logging in via SSH, but changing configs instead of running remote, instead of running Python code. There is one, it's rare, but you can treat some NASes like a server. So for example, Arista EOS, you can run Ansible against it like it was a Linux server, because it is a Linux server. It runs Alma Linux. And then it formerly ran CentOS, and before that ran Fedora. Some of the other network operating systems, you can do the same thing. Now, why would you do that? Install RPMs, Python scripts that are run locally, that kind of thing. It's not really done all that much. When I wrote Arista's initial automation course back like 5 years ago, we actually put this into that automation course to show you how to do that, but no one really did. So we ended up taking it out because there's so much to learn in automation anyway. All right. So I think that's good. That's 30 slides. It's more than enough for this course. If we do 2 minutes per slide, that's an hour, and there'll be demos and stuff. So I'm satisfied with this. This will be more than enough for an episode. So that was the process. It took me about an hour, but only because it was already in my head. So I already practiced it, and yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop this stream, and I'm gonna grab some coffee and a quick bite, and then the course is gonna start in 20 minutes.